In a quiet land where hills met the open sky and fields stretched toward the horizon, there lived a people who believed in God and spoke of His ways. They worked the soil, raised their families, and gathered at the gates of the village to share wisdom passed down through generations. Among them lived a man named Eliam. He was not poor, yet he was not rich. His house was modest, his field was small, and his life was simple. But what weighed most heavily on Eliam was not his labor or his circumstances, it was his thoughts. Each day Eliam woke before the sun and looked upon his land with worry. He would say to himself, "The soil is too hard. The harvest will be small. I will never have enough." And as he spoke these words in his heart, his strength faded before the day even began. Not far from him lived another man named Nathan. His field was no larger, his house no stronger, and his hands no more skilled. Yet when Nathan rose each morning, he lifted his eyes and said, "This is the day the Lord has made. Whatever comes, He will walk with me through it." Both men prayed to the same God. Both faced the same challenges. Yet their lives began to move in very different directions. One year, a season of testing came upon the land. The rains delayed, the earth cracked beneath the sun, and fear quietly entered the hearts of many. The elders spoke in low voices, and mothers looked anxiously at their children. The people wondered what would become of them if the skies remained closed. Eliam looked at the dry ground and felt his heart sink. "This is the end," he said. "God has forgotten us. There is no point in hoping." And as the days passed, he worked less and less. Why labor, he thought, when the outcome is already decided? His prayers became short and hollow, filled more with complaint than trust. Nathan, too, saw the drought. He felt the same heat and walked the same dry paths. Yet he chose to speak differently. He said, "The Lord who sent rain before will do so again. I will prepare my field as if help is already on its way." And so he continued to work. He tended his soil, encouraged his household, and spoke words of gratitude even when there was little to see. Some in the village mocked him quietly. "Why does he act as though rain is coming?" they asked. "Does he not see the sky?" But Nathan answered only with patience, for his hope was not rooted in what he saw, but in whom he trusted. As the weeks passed, the difference between the two men became clear. Eliam grew weaker in spirit. Each day confirmed what he already believed, that nothing would change. Nathan, however, grew stronger. Though his body tired, his heart remained steady. His thoughts were guarded, and his mind rested on the promises he had learned since childhood. The elders observed and began to teach the people, saying, "The mind is a field of its own. What you plant there will grow, whether good or harmful. Fear will multiply fear. Faith will give birth to strength." They reminded the people of ancient wisdom, that a person becomes what they dwell upon in their heart. For thoughts shape words, words guide actions, and actions lead a life forward, or hold it back. As time went on, the drought continued. Many grew restless. Some turned bitter. Others blamed one another. Yet a few chose to hope, not because circumstances were kind, but because their trust in God remained firm. One evening, a traveler came through the village and stayed among them. He listened to their concerns and watched their ways. When he saw the contrast between Eliam and Nathan, he gathered the people and spoke to them plainly. "You all face the same sky," he said. "You all walk the same ground, yet your lives do not look the same. This is because the battle is not only in the field, but in the mind. God works powerfully in hearts that expect Him even before the answer arrives. The people reflected on these words. Some felt convicted. Others felt encouraged. Eliam listened quietly, but his heart resisted. It was easier to believe that failure was certain than to risk hope again. Not long after, clouds began to gather in the distance. At first they were small, hardly noticeable, but Nathan saw them and smiled. He told his household, "Prepare, for rain is coming." Eliam saw the same clouds and said, "They will pass. They always do." That night the rain fell. It was not sudden or violent, but steady and gentle. The earth drank deeply, and the land was renewed. Fields that had been prepared responded quickly. Seeds that had been planted in faith began to grow. Nathan's field flourished. Eliam's land, however, had been neglected. Though rain fell upon it as well, little came forth. And Eliam understood then that the rain was never the deciding factor. The preparation of the heart had been. In time, Eliam humbled himself and came to Nathan. "Teach me," he said, "not how to farm, but how to hope again." And Nathan answered him kindly, saying, "Guard your thoughts. Speak truth instead of fear. Trust God not only with your prayers, but with your expectations." From that day forward, Eliam learned a new way of thinking. When fear arose, he challenged it with faith. When doubt whispered, he remembered the faithfulness of God. Slowly his life changed, not because the world became easier, but because his mind became anchored. The elders continued to teach the people, saying, "Positive thinking, in the way of God, is not denying hardship. It is choosing faith over fear. It is aligning the mind with truth instead of despair." And so the lesson was passed down through generations, that God calls His people to renew their minds, to meditate on what is good and true, and to trust Him even when the path is unclear. For the power of positive thinking is not found in human strength, but in faith that looks beyond what is seen and rests in the promises of God. And blessed are those who believe before seeing, prepare before receiving, and trust God not only for rain, but for wisdom to plant in hope.